There we go. All right. So I come from a very small family. How many of us Cheech and Chong familiar movie? Born in the East LA, orale. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's me. My parents are from a small rural town in Mexico. They moved up to the United States into LA in hopes to create a family and provide a better environment for their children to come up in. So there was basically 3 of us. We're a family of 5. Father worked 9 to 5, 7 days a week. Mother pretty much stayed home and reared us. But the one thing they didn't have really was because in rural Mexico where they grew up, school wasn't a big priority. So they didn't have all the best skill sets and tools, per se, to raise us here in the United States and say, mijo, focus in school, do your homework, have an exit plan from school, into college, et cetera, et cetera. None of that was really existent. So when I went through school, basically K through 12 for me was just, like fun time, play time. And I basically just, stumbled from one grade into another. And fortunately, many of the times I didn't even have the GPA to make the next grade. But because of the LA school systems are, overpopulated, understaffed, they just figured pump them into the next grade, it's somebody else's problem. So by the time I got out of high school, I really didn't have any exit plan or any strategy of what I was going to do with myself in life. I had a better idea of what I wasn't going to do and wasn't going to try out because I had such low self-esteem and insecurities and limiting thoughts. And so my clear picture of what I wasn't going to do is I wasn't going to go to college because I felt dumb and insecure. And so why would I set up myself for failure by plugging into a academic environment to only fail and the outcome and then blame myself, right? I should have known better. Why did I even try it out, right? The other one was why join the military? And the military is actually a very popular choice because, Los Angeles, no bigger plans. Sometimes you could just find some sort of career structure in the military. But again, I didn't feel I was cut from that type of fabric to succeed in the military environment. As much as I was a fan of it growing up, and I loved the Marine Corps poster, the few, the proud of the Marines, and all that other, very inspiring stuff. I just didn't feel that was my cup of tea, so I'm not going to do that either. So by the time I got out of high school, I actually didn't have much of anything going on other than a couple part-time jobs, and my goal day-to-day was really just to make enough money, put some gas in my car, buy some cervezas, maybe make the cover charge at a club, meet a little chavalita, make some chavalitos, and that was my big aspirations. And I truly believe that was my humble existence, and that was going to be what I was going to do in life. All those other things you see on movies and people succeeding at great endeavors was just not my thing, right? Okay, as it so happens, fate would have a very different plan for me. And other people, much wiser and insightful than I am, also had a different plan for me. I eventually joined the Marine Corps, but that Marine Corps entrance wasn't actually a choice that I consciously made. It was actually a plan to try to undermine the law that ended up backfiring me. So really quick, that story, we got picked up for looting, me and some of my constituents, I like to say now. We got picked up for looting. 2 of the other guys were already convicted felons, so they're looking at their 2nd or 3rd strike. So they're going back, and so this is the arraignment. So I'm fast forwarding here, and I'm sitting there, waiting for my cue. I'm 18 years old. Had been in and out of jail a few times, but nothing any extensive time. It was just one of those drunk tanks kind of things. 3 or 4 days you're out. And as cool as doing time and fresh out the joint, was for a lot of the gangbangers that I hanged out with, it wasn't my thing. And I knew that if I ended up going to jail, I'd just fall deeper down that, negative path of, thug life, if you will. And it wasn't something I really wanted to do. All I was looking for was a sense of belonging, a sense of community, a sense of camaraderie and brotherhood, et cetera, et cetera. So I basically lied to the judge, and I said, Your Honor, if, I do any kind of jail time, you're going to make me ineligible to join the service, and you don't want to be a part of that, failing story of ruining a youth's life, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't nearly that articulate. It was more of a lot of like, yeah, yo, essay, blah, blah, blah. But eventually, he instantly saw the opportunity and saw the sucker in me. He's like, okay, well, come back here with some paperwork and documentation and recruiter, and we'll take it from there. And so my brilliant, scheming mind goes out the courthouse, and incidentally, coincidence or by, greater design, right across the street from the courthouse is all 4 branches of military recruiting. Somebody has a grander scheme of things here. So short of the long, I ended up walking up to the Marine Corps recruiter. I explained the whole story. I said, I want nothing to do with joining the Marine Corps or any type of military branch, but I need you to help me out. And he said, sure, you look like a, interesting young guy that probably got a raw deal in life. We'll have you sign these documents. I'll take care of, see what I can do. And so fast forward, that plan failed miserably and stuff. So I found myself in the Marine Corps, at the Yellow Footsteps at MCRD San Diego, getting my head shaved, and off onto my new journey I began. And in boot camp, it was very easy for me to thrive because I was already a very angry kid when I was growing up. And because you're an angry kid, my outlet was naturally like working out, weightlifting. I remember having those, cement-filled plastic weight benches and stuff. And, at 11 years old, I was just already going at it. And so boot camp was a very natural environment for me because anything the drill instructors threw at me or screamed at me, I was like, dude, I've seen worse from my mom, man. Like, is this all you got? Like, seriously. So it was a very easy environment for me to survive in. Don't get me wrong, Marine Corps boot camp has its challenges for sure. But the issue became when I got out into the Marine Corps, General Fleet Marine Corps, they have this whole concept of, respecting the rank, structure, and authority and the hierarchy. And I was still a kid from the streets with a chip on my shoulder. But the funny thing about the Marine Corps, the funny saying is that you could take the kid out of the streets, but you can't take the streets out of the kid, right? And then the Marine Corps has a very methodical approach for that as well, incidentally. So after a few beatdowns and sort of an attitude adjustment of mine, I did very well in the Marine Corps. I spent my first 2 years basically through basic training. I got an opportunity to join Marine Corps Special Forces. By this point, my older brother had already been in the Army for 2 years. So I found myself in a special unit, elite unit. And after about 3 years, I said, oh, this is the life. Like, this is what I want to do with myself in life. I made a decision to be a career military person with the Marine Corps. I also spoke to my brother and said, hey, bro, he was in general infantry, some tank battalion. I said, you got to try out the Special Forces, man. It's a whole other environment, a whole other set of cup of tea and rules, if you will, and type of toys that you get to play with is at another level. And I'm not sharing this for bragging. I'm sharing this because this is going to be relevant later in the story. Can I get a bottle of water, please? So basically, I went into the Marine Corps, and after about my second deployment and 6 years into it, I basically ended up finding myself, okay, what's the next challenge? Like, I always like to advance and try out new things, and it's all about one-upping my brother as well, because my brother's 2 years older than me. Thank you. And in football, we would always take it to the next level, tit for tat, tit for tat. So I remember when he got into Army Special Forces, I said, how am I going to surpass my brother? Once again, outdo him. And I was like, oh, I got an idea. I'll go over to the SEAL teams and try to make it to SEAL Team 6, Dev Group. And he's like, okay, I'll take, you up on that. And then I'll go over to Delta Force, which is, basically the two top tiers of the military special operations you can achieve. And we have all seen the movies. So in my transition over to the Navy, I actually had about 6 weeks of downtime while I was waiting to class up for basic SEAL training, BUDS. And I was riding my motorcycle, going through an intersection. A car just basically blew through his stop sign, didn't see me coming up the road, and just nailed me, took me off the bike. I went into some ditch, landed on my back, and I had another friend of mine that was with me, saw the whole thing, and went down there, and I was unconscious, brought me back to consciousness, did the quick vitals, and it was readily apparent that I'd done some permanent damage to my back, and after doing some assessments, that I had paralyzed myself inevitably. The sort of add the insult to injury, if you will, I was also engaged to be wed that following Saturday. So this is a Friday, 8 days prior to my date of wedding, if you will. So, but the thing about accidents on these sort of events is they don't discriminate against your plans, your income, gender, race, education. They just happen. The only thing that separates those that sort of triumph and overcome and those that don't is a choice, right? A state of mind, perception on the circumstances. There we go. So I find myself now in a new reality, and the problem was I didn't accept the new reality. My vision of self was military special operations, soldier of fortune, off the grid, et cetera, kicking doors, snatching throats, behind the scenes, if you will. And this new plan of, hey, you broke your back, you done permanent damage, you have irreversible paralysis, get your mind around being in a wheelchair, possibly going to school and plugging into corporate America. And that was not something that I had anything planned in my life. I was not prepared for, nor did I want to accept. So basically, for the next 5 years, I basically went into this gnarly, deep depression of just resisting the reality that I was put into. Okay, Incidentally, my wife, fiance at the time, still decided to marry me, and I say decided to marry me because I tried to talk her out of it, and then I was so doped up on painkillers and stories and everything, I don't even remember our actual wedding. She actually brought the officiants into the intensive care unit, and we wed right before I went into my back surgery. And about the only memory I have of the whole experience is a Polaroid picture that she had them take while we were in the hospital, okay? So eventually, you know, that short moment down the road, I decided to just kind of, this is a sinking ship, you know, I'm not taking anybody with me, so I cut my friends out, I cut my family out, and eventually I emotionally dried my now new wife and forced her out of my life as well, because in my eyes, I was responsible for this broken situation that I created. Obviously, in the wedding vows, you know, in sickness and in health, I'd already pushed this beyond the threshold. So I gave her an out by forcing her out, if you will, in my eyes. So here we are, 2 years down the road, you know, very much confined, and found myself in a jail of my wheelchair, if you will. And I got to a point where about the only friends I had was 2 individuals that I befriended in the hospital that I had the same type of injury and same time frame of injury. But only these 2 individuals had an ability to sort of wiggle their toes, move their feet a little bit, so they had a prognosis for standing and walking again, if you will. And after you lose something as valuable and as meaningful to your life, like walking, you tend to be obsessive compulsive about getting back on your feet, if you will. And these individuals, about 6 months after we checked out of the hospital, and we stayed very much in contact, and we relied each other, and were confidants for each other, and would really only kind of open up to each other because we felt we understood each other naturally. Well, about 6 months after exit, I stopped hearing from them, and eventually I, you know, was checking in with their voicemail, phone calls, harassing basically, and eventually I got a call back from both their wives that they had conspired and executed suicide together. So at this point, I'm utterly alone, and even though my wife and I were separated at this point, she took the opportunity to sort of pin me in a corner and basically pose the scenario, because a lot of times we can be in a situation and not even realize the boiling waters that we've set ourselves up for, and that we're kind of just you know, slowly boiling and slowly roasting, if you will. And she's like, you know, you're utterly alone. You think you're the only one suffering in this situation. You know, you have nobody else around you. You know, so you got what you want, but what are you going to do now? You know, Oz, sink or swim. She put it in those exact terms, sink or swim. And she knew, because of my mentality of never quit, never surrender, the Spartan, never say die kind of thing, that I would hopefully respond in the right way, because suicide was not an option. Quitting was not an option. Mother always raised us, no matter how bad the circumstances, said, you never give up. But I was slowly trying to drink myself to death with painkillers and overdosing, and the idea of accidentally overdosing was okay to me. So eventually, when she posed that situation, I said, okay, you're absolutely right. I'm going to swim. I'm going to give it a shot. So I got enrolled in school. And at this point, you got to understand, I had no faith for my ability to find a fulfilling, purposeful meaning in life anymore. I'd given up, because if I couldn't do what I wanted to do, I didn't envision myself doing anything else, because I wouldn't allow the space for that. So I got into school, and I said, I'm going to take that first step. So this is blind faith. You know, you don't have to know the plan, the whole hierarchy, or even where the stairs lead. You just got to be able to have the faith that they're going to lead you somewhere. And that's basically where it started. And my biggest phobia was going back to school, because I felt so insecure about my ability to achieve in college. But when you're posed with a situation like, you know, it's succeed or die trying, you know, which is why the Vikings were so successful. Their version for invading and taking over islands was basically come in on the boats and then burn the boats they came in on, and then it's succeed or die trying, right? So when you have this mindset like, I'm never going to walk again, I'm in a wheelchair, I don't want to be a liability on our society. I want to at least plug into this society what I take out of it. So I had to plug in and be something as far as working individual. So I went through school, and I went right through college, 4.5 years, double major, business and communications. And concurrently, I got enrolled in adaptive cycling, which I didn't even know there was such a sport. I was an avid cyclist before my injury. And then after my injury, I knew I wanted to get physical and be active in something, but I had no idea what kind of sports were out there. And as it turns out, there's an adaptive version of cycling. It's called hand cycling. You can do marathons in them. You can do all sorts of different races available out there. And as it turns out, it's also a Paralympic sport. And it was never my plan to go out and win some races and do any kind of major accolades, but eventually one thing led to another, and because of the snowball effect and then the slow one step next after the other, I ended up finding myself now at 3 Paralympic Games with 6 Paralympic gold and bronze medals, okay? And even in spite of all those winnings, and I've done Kona Ironman. How many of us are familiar with the Kona Ironman distance? It's like the championships of championship triathlons. You're talking about a 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike ride, and a full marathon run. That's a long day for anybody, okay? It took me 12 and a half hours, all upper body, okay? It's crazy what the body can do when you set your mind to do something, okay? And even with all these accolades and recognition, I still felt my college degree was my greatest accomplishment. And for the longest time, I would actually utter those words that my college degree was my greatest accomplishment because it was so far out of my comfort zone versus the physical fitness side of it. But in reality, neither of those two elements are my greatest accomplishments. My greatest accomplishment to date is to actually be able to switch my mindset from a can't do to a can do, and my renewed vision on life and outlook on life. I truly believe now that we are our own worst enemy in what we can achieve in life, okay? He who says he can and who says he can't are both usually right. So now I have this new frame person and basically going out and being a go-getter, and it's as simple as a choice, okay? As long as there's passion, as long as there's purpose, you can accomplish it, okay? There's a lot of things that we really sort of think in life and then don't really back up with a why, and we think more of a what, and so you know, willpower gets you so far, but eventually it will die. But with the why, with the actual great passionate drive, that's inspiration that does not die, okay? So in hindsight, I realized that it's basically everything to do with the mindset, okay? We have to be mindful of the stories we tell ourselves. I got so good and effective at telling my own pitiful story of a broken line that I even gave it a name, a broken line curse, that I was this Spartan warrior who was destined to be in the military for the rest of his life, basically, his career, and I broke my own sword-wielding hand by being careless because the accident wasn't an accident. I allowed it to happen because I got caught slipping and some car punked me out. And this is after 2 deployments with the military and 2 years of special operations training. I get punked out by some car. So to me, it was my own fault for getting careless. So I gave it a broken line curse, and I got so good at telling the story that nobody could actually refute it and say, Oz, knock it off, slap me in the face, because I wish that's what somebody had done. Because that's how ludicrous it is when people get in these self-pitying stories of self-loathing. It's just the story. And then just like a radio station that's playing that very boring, depressing song, instantly you get in the mood like, oh, that's just depressing. Change the preset, and boom, you get another song. Next thing you know, Miley Cyrus is on, and you're getting your car dance on and everything like that, right? It's that easy. It is that easy in concept, but in application is a different story, okay? So, like I said, in the beginning of the said, he who says he can, he who says he can't, right? So we have all these excuses as to why we see others accomplish and why we don't accomplish. So we see our siblings, our peers, our coworkers, people on TV, people next to us accomplishing things that we would like to aspire to accomplish ourselves, but we always have these excuses as to why we can't do it. Oh, I don't have the genetics. Oh, I don't have the resources. I wasn't raised in that neighborhood. I'm not affiliated with that, group, et cetera, as to why we don't achieve and they can attain success. And they're all excuses. So here I'm going to give you a good example of how all those are basically, stumped or refuted, because in my family alone, we have a sibling set of 3, okay? So my brother actually made it to Delta Force. He's been shot 4 times, he's got 4 Purple Hearts, and he's finishing up a 28-year career service next year, okay? And again, he made it to Delta Force, the peak of all the elite military units you can get. I worship the guy, the ground he walks on, because he is my idol, all right? Older brother. So now you have my twin sister, who was raised in the same environment, and her current status is a 20-year meth addict, homeless in San Diego, 5 children, 4 different fathers. One's been shot dead, one got deported for life, and the other one's locked up for life, okay? And the second you mention mother to her, she gets violent and very emotional, because she is a victim of how we grew up, okay? So at this point, you have 2 individuals. So my brother, without much argument, we would say is on the right side of the spectrum of success in our society as we know it, and my sister on the far left extreme as failure in our society as we know it, and myself, who has wandered both extremes several times in a life, because I technically am a suicide survivor. I tried to drink myself to death and overdose on painkillers, and fortunately I failed. And now I'm the furthest I can be from any kind of mindset to even think about such things, because I'm a very fulfilled individual with a purposeful life, okay? So now what do you attribute one's failure or one's success? You have the same parents, same resources, same influence, same environment, same everything. I was at one point with my sister and another point now with my brother, okay? It's as simple as a choice, okay? How we perceive and how we interpret the experiences that happen to you in your life. You can either be a victim or a victor, okay? You can go through it or you can grow through it, okay? My brother, when he was 15, made a very resolved decision to leave LA, leave mother's tyranny, and leave just the general drama that we grew up in. And he said at 15, he made an exit plan, and at 18, he joined a community college until he had enough credits to join the Army, and he was out, okay? And don't get me wrong, we love our parents to death, and we have a great relationship with them now, okay? My brother has, found a way to basically realize that mother's whoopings was just basically a preparation for what the military was going to expose us to, because life whoops you every day, okay? And so he says some of his hardest special forces training, like, Mama prepared him for that, and he thanks her every day, and as I do as well, okay? But my sister doesn't have that same perception, and so she's a victim of the circumstances still, okay? All right, and so another lesson there is we have to basically learn to manage those emotions that get us, because a lot of the times we can be driven by emotions, and we don't even realize it, but the emotions will ruin you, and they'll actually get to the point where they can possibly paralyze you. The doctors were wrong. Let me just adjust my pantaloons, okay? So I had realized that I was having such a difficult time with the concept of redefining myself. Who would I be? What would I become? And could I live a fulfilling life that I wouldn't even try? I was so scared of even trying anything new that I just couldn't do it, okay? But it turns out I got back on my feet, pun intended. Yeah, all right? And I could do this all day. I mean, I got some real good core. I got a mean river dance. This was not in the budget, though. We'll talk to the event guys. Basically, so I don't want to sit here and stand, I defied medical science and the doctors were wrong and, up their keister, blah, 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 blah. Basically, let's take, my circumstance is very unique because I basically didn't sever the entire spinal cord. And because I didn't break my entire back, I had about 30 to 20% of my spinal cord still intact. The doctor said, we don't know what that corresponds to. There's likely no chance you're going to stand again, but, blah, 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 blah. So basically, to give you an idea of how I'm standing is, let's just start from a clean slate. From the waist down, I am fully paralyzed. And the only muscles I have use of are my quads and a little bit of hamstring. No glutes. Okay, and nothing below the knees. But I got these orthotics that basically work like prosthetics. And so I'm up here, I lock my knees out, and I'm balanced on 2 stilts. But because I developed the heck out of my core area and everything, I basically can stand and do this all day. Eventually, I'll start sweating if I stand long enough, but I don't get tired because I've been doing it for so long, okay? So just imagine anybody who's ever tried or done a plank, any muscle groups that you got using on a plank is the muscle groups that I'm using to stand. So my point with it all is just basically take what you got and run with it, okay? Because I was so fed up and hung up on what I had lost, my ability to walk, my ability to pursue my life's dream, which being in military special forces, et cetera, that I wasn't focusing on what I still had right in front of me, with me all the times, which is my ability to just contract my quads and then eventually get back on my feet. So once I realized this, make lemonade with the lemons, all right, then I just started applying it in everywhere else in life. And eventually, I realized that it's all a matter of the stories we're telling ourselves, okay? I was telling that negative story so much that I internalized it, believed it, manifested, and then eventually it became the circumstances of my life. And I realized later, and my therapy came on stage because I got put, after winning my first gold medal in Beijing, I got put in front of audiences like Wounded Warriors because they wanted good role models and mentors, et cetera, that I wasn't going to tell them a depressing, sad story of my existence. I was going to tell them a very inspiring, uplifting version of that same story. So I took the same individual with the same circumstances, i.e. me, and painted the best version of it. And eventually I said that story so many times that I started drinking my own Kool-Aid, and I was like, I'm a pretty cool dude. I can do some pretty cool things. And I ran with it. And it's that easy, okay? So you have to realize that the hardships are there to make you stronger, not to suffer. You only suffer when you don't find the lesson. And that's the thing with experience, right? She's a bitch of a teacher because she gives you the test first and then teaches you the lesson later, all right? But there's always a lesson to be learned. It's like we understand it very easily in concept with weightlifting and bodybuilding, but we don't realize that those same challenges there are there to make your mind grow spiritually and emotionally, okay? All right, so basically some of the other lessons here is we have purpose and faith, all right? If you don't have a purpose and a purposeful why, then I could tell you, you have more disabilities than I do because you're walking around life blindfolded, all right? And there's a big difference between a what and a why, okay? A what is what you want to do in life, the title you want to have, the income you want to make, the car you want to drive, the house you want to have. But the why is the actual reason you even exist. Okay, a good example of that is my sister is currently homeless. I have needed self-therapy, so I want to go back to grad school and basically get my degree in clinical psychology so I can self-help, so I can save my sister's life, basically, because in another 5 years, she's not going to be around. And then do my good job standing on stage and helping others with their personal trials and tribulations, okay? All right, that is a purposeful why, and that gets me up every morning to do my grind and get better at what I'm doing and improve my craft, okay? All right, the other one on health, I won't spend too much time on that. Basically, your body's the only place you have to live with, so take care of the temple, all right? Be mindful of the food you put in it, be mindful of the drinks, because it reciprocates everything you put in it. It is that simple. What you put in it is what you get out, okay? It's very simple, straightforward, all right? You gotta be mindful of excuses, all right? We all run out of steam. We all have second doubts. So I'm standing back there. I'm like, am I in the right industry? Well, this is a big crowd, very critical. A lot of people. Should I be doing this? I could just escape out the back door. All right, because I have 2 concussions that basically make it very difficult for me to memorize anything. All right, I'm like, what is that, Dory, that movie with the fish? Like, I literally forget where I'm at sometimes. All right, makes it very hard for public speaking, right? But also makes it very easy to live life without regret because I don't remember where I goofed up. All right, so just acknowledge them, say, okay, I have a bad memory and I want to be a motivational speaker versus I have a bad memory, but I want to be able to conceive. That when you throw the but, then it's an excuse and you justify the inaction, okay? All right, second is define success, and I already said it, anything with a meaningful purpose that you're moving towards on a daily basis, okay? And that could be a good soccer mom, a good parent, a good mentor, better church community member, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anything with a meaningful purpose that you're progressively realizing on a daily basis could be defined as success, because success is not money, success is not cars and material items you own. Success is something that is personal, inside wealth, okay? Happiness comes from within, all right? And then lastly here is develop a vision. How many of us have a self-motto or a song we live by or a slogan that really gets us going? All right, we got to work on that. All right, y'all leaving me hanging here. So my motto, obviously, no limits. It wasn't something I created and just all of a sudden ran with it. I started it 8 years ago now, after Beijing, and then I just started taking it on a Post-it, developing it, moving it with me whenever I was travel, post it on the mirror. Because when I could stand up, basically after my accident, I couldn't stand up anymore. So I remember when I was able to stand up and brush my teeth in front of the mirror, something as simple as standing in front of the mirror and brushing my teeth moved me to tears. Okay, so the no limits thing came with me, and every hotel room I was in, whether I was traveling for competition or speaking, it was right there on a Post-it. Okay, and eventually the adhesive ran out, Scotch tape. All right, then my roommates kept harassing me, what's with the Scotch tape and Post-it? Shut up, it's none of your business. Eventually I got smart, tattooed it on my chest. All right? So I'm not sitting here advocating ink work or anything like that. What I'm saying is get a slogan, get something you stand for. It works, because if you say something to yourself long enough, it'll eventually become true, okay? Thoughts are like seeds. Eventually that seed grows into a fruit, and you will have to eat it sooner or later, okay? And that's great and dandy when we're saying we're blessed, I got a great job, I got a great family, and all that other stuff, but it's when we're negative talking, oh, the economy's down, I'm probably going to lose my job, I'm not good enough, I can't lose the weight, I can't make that promotion, et cetera, okay? Mind the thoughts.